Good afternoon. I'm so glad to see what a wonderful group we have here, people as far away as Cranford and New Brunswick, and I'm very, very, very pleased with that. So let's start with Edward Hopper because he's very deep, and there's a lot going on with all of his works. He was born in 1882 in Nyack, New York, and his parents encouraged his interest in art. And he studied in New York City at first under William Merritt Chase and then Robert Hanrai, who was, of course, the part of the Ashcan School. In 1906, between 1906 and 1910, he made 3 trips to Paris. The money he earned from his commercial work, which continued until September 1924, enabled him to do this. And he fell in love with Paris. And in fact, for one of his stays, he stayed for 10 months. He painted the bridges and buildings and developed his style. In 1913, he exhibited at the Armory Show. He sold one work that same year, but did not sell another until 1923. So that was like 10 years of having to do commercial work in order to feed his art work. He began doing prints and engravings. He did not sell another painting until, let me see, in 1924, when he married Joan Nevelson, who became his business manager. Hopper's best works are done between 1925 and 1950, but he continued to paint. Now today, if you want to see a lot of Hopper's works, you go to the Whitney Museum, because all of Hopper's papers and notebooks and sketches were left to the Whitney Museum so that other people who are studying him can go there and study. Now I'm beginning with, wait a minute, houses, okay. Now this is the mansard roof house from 1923. This home is in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and it was exhibited at the Brooklyn Museum in 1923, and they bought it from him for $100. That was the first sale he made in the 1920s. He was fascinated with buildings, especially ones with many pediments and railings and shutters and ornamentation on it that lends itself to a pattern of light and shadow, as this one does. He focuses in closely. There are no figures or any indications of anyone inside. This was to remain an integral part of his aesthetic. Careful observation. He would study the houses under various lighting conditions and also in the evening. Now, I want to show you a photo of what the mansard house looked like in 2012. There it is. There is the same house in 2012. Here's the next one from 1924, Haskell's house. He used a watercolor medium for this work because it provides infinite variations of color and allows for transparency. Now, notice that the lawn and the broken brush strokes on the right reveal some of the paper beneath, because this was done on paper. And look at the electric pole. The electric poles don't have any wires on them. He took them away because he felt that they would be a distraction. The next one here is Hodgkin's house. Light was important to Hopper. Note the diagonal separating of the light and the shadow, and the roof edge also. This was well kept, but there is no human presence. The windows have taken on a kind of blankness, as if there's nobody there and there's no one inside. There is no sense of someone living there, like opening the door and going outside to pick up the newspaper or something of that sort. Now here is another one, Marshall's house. The condition of this house brings to mind a poem by Joyce Kilmer. The screens do not allow us a look into the porch, and it is shuttered as if closed for the season, or perhaps the owner has died. I'm just going to give you, I mentioned the poet, Joyce Kilmer. I'm going to just give you a little bit on this, all right? Whenever I walk the suffering along the Erie track, I go by a poor old farmhouse with its shingles broken and black. I suppose I've passed it 100 times, but I always stop for a minute and look at the house, the tragic house, the house with nobody in it. I've never seen a haunted house, but I hear there are such things. They hold the talk of spirits, their mirth and sorrowings. I know this house isn't haunted, and I wish it were, I do, for it wouldn't be so lonely if it had a ghost or two. The house on the road to suffering needs a dozen panes of glass, and somebody ought to weed the walk and take a side to the grass. It needs new paint and shingles, and the vines that should be trimmed and tied. But what it needs the most of all is some people living inside. Do you want me to continue with the rest? Okay. If I had a lot of money and all my debts were paid, I'd put a gang of men to work with brush and saw and spade. I'd buy that place and fix it up the way it used to be, and I'd find some people who wanted a home and give it to them free. Now a new house standing empty with staring window and door looks idle perhaps and foolish like a hat on the black block in the store. But there's nothing mournful about it. It cannot be sad and lone for lack of something within it that it has never known. But a house that has done what a house should do, a house that has sheltered life, that has put its loving wooden arms around a man and his wife, a house that echoed the baby's laugh and held up his stumbling feet, is the saddest when it left alone that ever your eyes could meet. So when I go to suffering along the Erie track, I never go by the empty house without stopping and looking back. Yet it hurts me to look at the crumbling roof and the shutters falling apart, for I can't help thinking the poor old house is the house with a broken heart. Okay, now we'll move on. This house at dusk from 1935. Notice the stand of trees behind, blocking our vision from anything else, and it's a very, very close. The trees are growing very, very close, so you have no idea of what is behind there. And this is another thing we'll see in one of his other paintings as well. Now, we are allowed, however, to view into two apartments with the suggestion of a lamp lit into a third one. There is a horizontality of the painting that is relieved only by the chimney tops there, okay? And the woods behind cut off the view of the sun as it is setting, and the trees are silhouetted against the sky. There is also a steps there with a small light on, creating a vertical path with an obtuse angle of light. But it was a master of composition. He said, what I wanted to paint is sunlight on the side of the house. And there was also a shadowy figure there in one of the windows. But the figure doesn't look like it's doing anything. Now this is East Wind over Weehawken. In 1935, we are allowed a view the cloudy aspect is unusual for Hopper. Clouds suggest movement, and Hopper's work have a stillness which denies movement. His perspective also is not the classic Renaissance perspective, because if you look at the two street lights, they are completely out of whack. This one is real tall, and that one look like it's a shrinking miniature, okay? Now, there is a certain interplay of horizontals, verticals, and angles which he liked to do. And this is the reason why I think he chose to do this particular thing. And there is also a notice across the street. Now that right there is a street, and across the street where we are standing, obviously there is an empty lot with, again, the grass overgrown. So in other words, again, he's telling us there's nobody there, okay? Now, again, we talk about the interplay of the colors with a very limited palette. Now, in August of 2013, the Pennsylvania Academy auctioned off this work, and it went for, I'm not sure, between 22 and $28 million. So his work has really accelerated. Now this is probably his most famous house, the house by the railroad. And we are going to start to see an awful lot of railroads or steps going this way, or also the curb. And it's again, he liked that horizontal look in his paintings. Now, this work was the first painting by any artist that was bought for the Museum of Modern Art. It stands beside an isolated rail track. It looks like a dowager with good bones and good jewelry, but her clothes are shabby and unfashionable. The empty sky indicates isolation. It's just like holding its breath and just waiting for something to happen. Now, another poem has also been written about this. I'm only going to give you the first four stanzas, okay, because it's interesting. It's by Edward Hirsch. It's out here in the exact middle of the day, this strange, gawky house has the expression of someone being stared at, someone holding his breath underwater, hushed and expectant. This house is ashamed of itself, ashamed of its fantastic mansard rooftop and of its pseudo-Gothic porch, ashamed of its soldiers and large, awkward hands. But the man behind the easel is relentless. He is as brutal as sunlight and believes the house must have done something horrible to the people who once lived here. So he mentions Edward Hopper's interpretation of this. Now, I'm going to show you something else. In 2016, this house was reinterpreted on the Metropolitan Museum roof, and it was done by a woman who had gone out and wherever they were getting rid of things, old wood and whatnot, and she collected the old wood, the old shingles, the old windows, and she recreated this house on the roof of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And here is the picture, and I'm in the picture. I deliberately put myself there because I was very impressed by this. And the lady who took the picture said, I said, gee, people must be interested. Oh, she said, they try to go in, they sit down on the steps. She said, I have to tell them to get up because this was made, again, it was a work of art, and I was fascinated with it, and that's the reason why I took the picture and I decided to put it in here. So in other words, his work goes on. People are still interested in what Edward Hopper did. And I think he's probably more loved right now than he ever was, I would say, okay? Now, we're now going to start looking at some urban views. This is one of the first ones, New York corner in 1913. Notice the street light, and also notice that the horizontality there. Obviously there's a street, but then you step up to the sidewalk, okay? Now, this is an early urban view. There is a crowd present, and we also see the use of aerial perspective. The subject matter remained a favorite. Notice the window shades at various levels. That's another thing you will notice. In other words, it's almost like the windows have closed their eyes, you see. Now, the streetcar tracks form a vertical plane that Hopper frequently used in his work to position us in relation to the painting. This is also seen in the house by the railroad track, as I mentioned to you. All right, now here's another one. Early Sunday morning. Now here, this was done in 1913. This could almost be an extension of the New York corner that we just looked at, with a secondary story removed. Strict horizontality, even to the long shadows of early morning. And there was nobody there. This might possibly be a Sunday, okay, when people sleep late and don't get up for another 2 or 3 hours. And there was also some things to like, shall we say, hold it to the ground. There is the fire plug, and there's also a barber shop there. Now, the cloudless sky. The sky is also cloudless, okay? And look at again. The window shades are all in different directions, up or down. Now, if there was an animal or a person there were placed, it would then give a fleeting sense of time. But there is no time. This is on the Lower East Side. Hopper lived at 2 Washington Square between 1913 and 1967. This row of buildings was built in 1878 and was torn down in 1939. So thus Hopper gives us slices of New York City that no longer exist, okay? Yes? I don't know where it's at. I'm sorry, I have to apologize to you that I didn't have a list today, and it's partially my fault because I thought Brandon had made me a list because he normally does, but Brandon's on vacation this week, so I'm very sorry. I know where one or two of them are, but as I said, this might possibly be in, if you go to the Whitney, you might possibly see this. Now, the Whitney may also, they had a number of years ago, more than 10 years ago, a big exhibit about Edward Hopper, and they may very well, I think they really should put together another one, certainly within the next few years anyway, I hope. Now here's another one. This is another one that's disappeared. The Lilly Apartments in 1926. The view from the Manhattan Bridge, and he used watercolor rather than oils to create a very dazzling effect of the sun. Now, on this side right here, you can even see a Hebrew letter, which must have been maybe in Brooklyn. This is a view from Manhattan Bridge, and this right here. This right here goes back, this railing here with these, black railing with these various X's and whatnot, that goes back to the Impressionists, especially Gustave Caillebotte. And you see that in the Impressionists in Paris. So he must have picked up on that because, again, he lived in Paris for, a few years altogether. So he must have picked that up in Paris. And that's where he must have gotten that horizontality that we see in almost all of his paintings. Now, let me see, right now. Now, this also was raised in 1932. That building, the Lilly Apartments, was gone in 1932. Now, let's look at another one, the Manhattan Bridge Loop. I'm going to read to you, he wrote a letter to the curator of the Addison Gallery about this work. Quote, I spend many days usually before I find a subject that I like well enough to do. The Manhattan Bridge Loop is an effort to give a sensation of great lateral extent and to make one conscious of the spaces and elements beyond the limits of the scene itself. The picture is planned very carefully in my mind before starting it, but except for a few small sketches, I relied on refreshing my memory by looking often at the subject. The color, design, and form have been subjected to considerable simplification. So, now there is one figure that's walking there, but again, it's a lot of rectangles. It's a lot of rectangles, okay? And a lot of up and down and zigzag kind of, if you start there and you look up and you look down and you look up and you look down, the roof line is a bunch of zigzags. Now, this is office in a small city. There were the man sits at a desk in front of 2 enormous windows, which look like they don't have any glass on them because we don't see any reflection, do we? The plane created by the window frame tilts upward, thus giving us a bird's eye view into the sunlit office. the geometric composition of squares, rectangles, triangles, and trapezoids. Even the shadow on his desk there. And then as he's looking out at the building that probably is across the street, and the only thing here, which if you see here, there is a little scroll right here, okay, which must be the facade of this building with the door going in. And across the street, these windows are arched, very much enhanced. In other words, this is enhancement, and this is also a way of arching. Now, the man is sitting there, and he's not doing anything. And nobody's come in to ask him any questions. He's simply looking out at the building. And we can't escape him, because he is against this white wall right here. And notice the color. The color scheme is very, very low. It's white, various shades of yellow, tan, and brown. Now right here too, we have brown, tan, brown, yellow, okay? So it's a very, very limited palette. And again, it has a picture of a man who is simply works in his own office. All right, now here's another one of these office ones. Now this is interesting. There is a sharp shaft of sunlight delineates the stone facade of that office with the receptionist. There is a gradually receding curve right here, gradually receding, and there is also another curve here. And again, look at the windows and look at the various shades. Now, I'm also going to point out to you something else that Hopper used many times in his work, and that is the three lights like that. The lights which seem to be going into recession. We are going to see that quite a bit now with his work. Now, the lady is standing there, and she's fully lit, you can see her, but she is having nothing at all to do with the person that is standing right there or the person behind her. It is almost as if she's in a bell jar. In other words, there is no communication, either a smile or holding your hand out to be shake your hand, or her paying attention to the customer that's standing there. You don't see that at all. And you also see, again, the horizontality continues with these blocks here, right there, okay? Now, the receding planes were formed by light and also by the structures. Now, let's see. Interior views. Okay. Here it is. First one, New York interior from 1921. Now, with this, we are going to be getting almost voyeuristic. In other words, as if we are across the street and we are looking into the apartment. Throughout his career, Hopper caught glimpses of the private life of those unaware that they were being seen. This woman is framed by a door and she appears to be sewing, but we don't see the thread. We just have to imagine that she's sewing. It is late, probably around 12 a.m. It is a very small space, and the interiors are claustrophobic. You're going to see that his interiors are very claustrophobic and very, very sparse and very, very uninviting, shall we say, okay? Now here's another one, an apartment house. Now here he's on a corner. And the woman is the housewife is making the bed in a corner room, but even that appears to be quite cramped, doesn't it? Beyond that, we have a view of the adjacent building, right? And the street, it looks very close, doesn't it? Like you can really, you don't need a telescope, or whatever. You just have to look across the road. There is an interplay of narrow rectangles of sills. His control of the composition is masterful. Now, Geldzahler, who is a art historian, he wrote of this calculated, concealed geometry of his composition. This is the first oil to enter the museum collection at the the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, and it was purchased by that academy. So it's in Philadelphia. Now here's another one. Hopper did many works of hotel rooms suggesting transitions. It's an enigmatic work. Here he challenges our powers of deduction. The hotel room is quite bleak, unadorned and uninviting. The woman's bag and clothes are in disarray, and she is sitting there in her slip and looking quite vulnerable. She's reading, I think, the Bible, which was left in all the hotel rooms at that time. She's wearing underwear, which makes her even more vulnerable. The light behind her is glaring, suggesting a bare light bulb. In other words, this is just absolute. Maybe this lady is really at the bottom of her with everything happening to her, and the shade. And again, we don't see the door. We just see her very shadowy and not looking up, certainly alone, and it makes for the looking at that is not very pleasant, is it? It really is not. The room is such that the entire work is an exercise in sadness. Now, here's another one. This one I'm going to give you quite a talk on because there was a lot going on in this little living room in New York in 1932. The small New York living room with two people. The man reads while the woman with the back toward us touches a piano key. And there's a large table between them which serves as a barrier. Now, he is reading. He's reading the newspaper. Maybe he's trying to get a job, or maybe he is just trying to concentrate on something else. And she has her finger on the piano key. And one gets the impression that she's not playing that piano, she's just striking the same key over and over and over again. Now, there is a large looming door in the back, and it is also a barrier, because if the door were open, it would probably hit the table, but notice there are no hinges, nor is there a doorknob, so basically these people are caught in that room. Are they caught in more ways than one? Are they caught in a marriage that doesn't work, or are they caught in poverty? This was, remember, 1932, and this was the start of the 30s and the problems we had with that. And does his concentration on the paper means he is searching for a job, or is it a way out of communicating with her? We don't know, and Hopper gives us no real clues. The light from the upper left corner casts shadow on their face. Now, it reminded me of Twelfth Night, "If music be the food of love, play on." But it also reminded me of another poem. It was it was a song that, let me see, that was used 3 times in, I'm trying to think of his name now, the Italian singer, and I'd forgotten his name for a minute, but he recorded it in all of his duet albums. He had 3 of them, and he recorded them 3 times with different people. Tony Bennett, okay? Now, I'm going to read this poem to you. It was set to music. How do you keep the music playing? How do you make it last? How do you keep the song from fading too fast? How do you lose yourself to someone and never lose your way? How do you not run out of things to say? And since we know we're always changing, why should it be the same? And tell me how, year after year, You're sure your heart will fall apart each time you hear his name. I know the way I feel for you, it's now or never. The more I love, the more that I'm afraid that in your heart I may not see forever, forever. If we can be the best of lovers, yet be the best of friends, if we can try every day to make it better, with any luck, then I suppose the music never, never ends. So I picked up on that when I saw this, and it reminded me of that wonderful song. He recorded it, the first time he recorded it, he did it with Sting. I don't know why he did it with another guy, but he did. The next time he recorded it, he did it with Barbra Streisand, and the next time also with, I believe, the black lady. What was her name now? Oh dear, there was also another woman he did, and I can't think of her name right now. But anyway, he put it in all three, and if any of you have the duets how many of you have the duets albums? All right, play the duet album tonight, okay? Okay. All right, now let's see. Okay, now here is another one. Room in Brooklyn, okay? Looking out rather than looking in. The woman on the left is joined by a small shaft of sunlight to the small table with flowers, the only adornment in the room. Tall windows show the apartment buildings beyond, and the windowsills echo the horizontality of the apartments. Okay, there it is. You get that same horizontality right here, and you get the verticality here along with the windows and also the window shades, okay? And you see that there is a horizontal light here on the carpet, as if the sun has come in and she is sitting in that horizontal spot of light. We don't know what she's doing. She might be knitting, she might be reading. It's hard to figure out what she's actually doing there. Okay, it's kind of a secret for us. We can't tell her activity. Is she looking out the window, or as we look at her? But Hopper gives us, again, no clues. And there is a quote here: the interior space with its windows, a membrane to the outside, suggests an allegory of the eye and the mind receiving and processing the world. Now, this is called Hotel 11 a.m. At 1936. The woman who posed was his wife, Jo, all right? And I think I should also have mentioned to you when we looked at the couple with the big table that she and Edward Hopper had a very contentious marriage. In fact, it was so contentious once that she bit him right down to the bone. So they really had problems. And yeah, really, I mean, wow. Okay, so this may be reflected in some of his works. Now, this is, here, Jo is the model. Another puzzle. She's not wearing any clothes. She's looking outside. Why? Her hair covers her face, so we don't know what her face is might tell us. So we are totally clueless in this, okay? But the shafts of light enter the room, and are they in a hotel? There is also a triangle of light there on the floor where her feet are placed, which means she's kind of caught there. Also, we can see that the room is very cluttered. It looks like there's a bed over there, and this right here is a lamp, and it's extremely cluttered. I mean, there's only like 2 steps from where she's sitting, or 2 or 3 steps over to the lamp. So it's quite a cluttered, and again, claustrophobic, has a claustrophobic feeling to it. Now, we are left, however, to try and puzzle this out. Why she's sitting there looking out at 11 o'clock in the morning. She should have her clothes on by now. So, now here's another one. The hotel lobby from 1943. This is unusual for Hopper. The drawn drapes behind that man reveal a dining room behind the lobby. But the carpet stripes moves our eye into the painting. This is extremely important because it moves our eye in, but it also separates this couple from this couple. Almost as if there's a line there and you don't cross on my side and I don't cross to your side, okay? Now, Notice the lady on the right is reading a book, and the couple on the left is perhaps waiting for a taxi, and they're standing there waiting for something. We don't know what. Now, the reader occupies the area where the desk is with space with its archway. The figures, as I say, are waiting for something, but we don't know what. There is no gesture, there is no idea of what's going to happen. And she is totally involved in her book. Now, this same lady might possibly be this is called Compartment C, 1938. The train tracks and trains were often used by Hopper. Perhaps trains implied impermanence, leaving and arriving. He painted hotels and houses by the tracks as well. And this lone woman is traveling in a car at night, another favorite theme, and she is lost in her reading as twilight falls. I think it's a very, very garishly lit, very garish, and anyway, to my mind, and she's not using this light. There's a garish light, but it's not from this, this is not the source of the light, okay? And you can see that she's traveling at night because there they are, there's a bridge right there. And again, that stand of trees, that you cannot see anything beyond that stand of trees. Now, this woman who was reading in the hotel lobby could be the same woman sitting here. Now, here is another one. This is the chair car of 1965. We see geometric patches of sunlight pull you into the scene, all right, toward the door. Notice that the door, again, has no hinges and no way to get out. And there are 4 people. They are not in communication with each other at all. And we see 2 ladies, and there's another lady, and there's a gentleman right there, okay? So there is no camaraderie. They all seem to be caught in their own thoughts. The door, as I said, has no window. Now, despite the comfort of the chairs, the train has an unworldly air, almost as if the passengers are going to an undesirable destination. That's what I thought. I wouldn't want to be on that train, okay? Now, it reminded me of something, a movie that once in a while shows on Turner Classic Movies. It's called Between Two Worlds, and it's a movie with John Garfield, Paul Hanreid, and Sidney Greenstreet, and it takes place on a boat, and there is a group of people who have been brought together on this boat, and they don't know each other. They're trying to find out who everybody is, but they don't know where they're going. And it's a very, very interesting movie. And if you ever see it, it's listed on. You can see it on Turner Classic Movies because they have had it. Just like a few days ago, they had Green Dolphin Street, and I didn't realize it was on. I only saw the last 5 minutes of it. It's a wonderful movie. But if you see Between Two Worlds, and of course John Garfield and Paul Hanreid and Sidney Greenstreet, they are marvelous, marvelous actors. Okay, so I would advise you to watch the movie, all right? Now, isolation. Now, we've been talking about an awful lot of isolation, Maryann. Come on, how much more isolation are we going to have? But there's some more that's coming up, okay? The first one. This is Sunday in 1926. This man is sitting on the curb of a street that filled with what looks like stores or businesses, and it suggests transience. Almost at any moment he may get up and walk away. The slumped posture suggests that he is tired, but Hopper uses this with many of his figures. His face is as blank as the empty storefronts behind him. The glass windows do not reflect any light or activity on the opposite side of the street. Indeed, many of the windows appear painted over. The diagonal line at the base is a compositional device we have already seen. This diagonal we've seen that with the house by the railroad track, all right? Okay, let's go to the next one. The New York restaurant, 1922. Restaurants' themes were popular with Hopper, another transient place. You go there and you leave, all right? The place is busy with waitresses bustling around. He uses a similar figure in one of his apartments where the lady that was making the bed, this is basically the same thing. This lady is serving and wearing a huge apron with a big bustle, a big bow in the back. Now, and of course, this is the way they were served. This is the way when you went to a restaurant in 1922, I suppose. Now, the bowed apron and the tablecloths create a white space in which she works, but the space is very compressed. It's crowded with coats, plants, tables placed close together. The figures look in different directions. The lady in the red hat is looking to the right of her companion. All right, here's the lady with the red hat, but she's looking over there. And the guy is not looking at her. His head is downward a little bit. And of course, there's that plant next to them. So it does look very, very cramped. Now, the next one here. The Automat, 1927. The lone figure sits with a cup of coffee. Her clothing indicates that it is a cold evening. Now, again, remember I mentioned that march of lights? There you see it again, almost like two of them, almost like a train track, right? You see it right there. Okay. Now, she is surrounded by hard surfaces, marble, glass, wood, and an iron radiator, which we don't see radiators anymore. The only adornment is a bowl of wax fruit in the window. It's a pathetic attempt at ornamentation. There is no warmth or comfort here. The introspective figure is downcast and disappointed. A quote from one author, Automat is a picture of sadness, yet it is not a sad picture. It has the power of great melancholy piece of music. But there is a void behind the windows, all right? And the lights are reflected, but again, they appear to be railroad tracks. All right, let's look at the next one. This is called Chop Suey, 1929. Now, we know it's chop suey because it must be an upstairs restaurant because most of those Chinese restaurants were upstairs. And even in London, the Indians have second floor. And there, of course, is the light outside, which they probably put on in the evening. It's a carefully crafted composition of verticals, horizontals, and trapezoids, which are set in with four figures, two women, and a gentleman and his friend who was cut off, and it looks as if they're ready to leave because I think he's looking at, he has a cigarette, but he's also looking at the bill because they look like they're ready to leave, okay? Now, the two women, however, on the other side share a table. The woman in green is not looking at her friend. She seems to be thinking about something. The teapot is untouched. We are cut off from a view outside by the painted windows and the fact that the restaurant is not at street level, so you don't see anybody walking by, okay? But we haven't seen anybody walking by with any of these restaurants, have we? Now, this next one is called Tables for Ladies. Now, that was in 1930. The Tables for Ladies indicates that used to appear in windows in New York restaurants, referring to the fact that they were inviting ladies in with the assurance that it's not a pickup place, okay? That was quite a thing in the 1930s. Now, in order, he doesn't have the lights here, but notice the diagonal of grapefruits. That's taken the place of the light, okay? And it's going at an angle. It's just going in an angle that way. And there are four figures, but each of these figures are not interacting at all. There were two patrons with a carafe on the table. The time on the clock is 7:55 p.m., which means the register, the lady behind the register, is tallying the day's total, while a waitress in the front adjusts the display prior to closing. The counter woman right here reminds me very much of the woman in the painting, let me see here, the Manet's bar at the Folies Bergère, because she's standing behind the bar and there's a mirror behind her and we see all the goings on, but she is standing there all by herself and alone, leaning on the counter because she might be very tired because they were not, the barmaids could not sit down. So she reminds me very much, and I wouldn't be surprised if he picked up on that. Remember, he spent a lot of time in Paris. So he would have seen that painting, and he would put her behind the register and a counter there. Now, let me see now. She is part of the scene, but apart from it. The figures are simplified and occupy their own space as if they have a bell jar over them. All right, so now let's go to the next one. Sunlight in a Cafeteria. From 1956, one of his most arresting works. The woman is seated in a strong shaft of light in summertime sun. The cafeteria lacks any ornamentation except for one plant on a window. The man nearby may want to make some contact, but she is downcast, lost in reverie. The blue chairs and her blue dress make her almost an inanimate figure in the cafeteria. The tension between the figures could be broken if there were some verbal exchange or some gesture. Now, we have looked at 5 restaurant scenes, and they all have something in common. Can anyone tell me what it is? They all have something in common.
No food.
There's no food.
Again, what did he say?
Lack of connection.
Lack of connection, you're correct on that. But the one thing in those 5 restaurants, nobody's eating anything. If there was eating, it would imply having a good time. It would imply it would imply celebration. There would be some motion and engagement with the food, but the lack of the food adds to the bleakness and melancholy of the scene. And so in other words, when you're eating, you say to somebody, oh, this is a good dessert. You want a taste of it? Oh, yeah, give me a little taste. And there was a give and take, when you're in the restaurant with even just one person or 3 or 4 people. It just kind of like a ball that rolls along for quite on its own. But in this case, we see these people are sitting there and they're simply not eating anything. Maybe they're that depressed that they don't want to eat. Now, this is a picture that's in the Clark Museum in Massachusetts. And Edward Hopper wrote to Stephen Clark, quote, "I'm very pleased that you have acquired my picture, Sunlight. I think it's one of my very best pictures." Okay. Now here's another one. This is, okay. Again, we see that stand of trees, don't we? All right. And again, we see the road, and we see these three gas pumps looking like, standing there like soldiers, right? Okay. Now, this is a road, and a rural landscape is a central theme for Hopper. This could be taken on, I believe this was done on Cape Cod. There is an impenetrable barrier of trees following a road as it curves around the gas station. It is twilight and looks very much like a scene from a Hitchcock movie or a film noir. The shafts of light from the office illuminate the scene. But the gas pumps stand like regimental figures, and they actually dwarf the man. Though he looks much smaller. He's dwarfed in the middle. Now, we know that they did numerous sketches of individual items and 2 sketches of the finished work. In the sketches, the mobile sign is closer to the shack, but in the final work, he moved it back and with a shaft of light, move our eyes into the painting. And when I look at this, and look at that road, that isolated, lonely road, the only thing I could think of, that must be the road to the Bates Motel. I don't know any other road. No, that has to be the road to the Bates Motel. Okay, some more nocturnal scenes in New York. Now, this is something we don't see anymore, do we? Drugstore on the corner, and with the decoration like that, because now all we've got is Walgreens, and every store looks exactly the same, okay, and it looks sterile. But this, I remember there was a pharmacy like this in Perth Amboy when I was a little girl, but you don't see it anymore. This is why it's so interesting to look at his stuff, because we see stuff that is no longer available. And young people don't even have a memory. Their grandparents might, but they certainly don't. Now, the corner drugstore filled with flasks filled with a magical liquid and a full-length display window is a local image long gone by and replaced again by Walgreens. Hopper creates a romantic image, despite the X-Lax sign, okay? Note the line of the curb, right here, again, we see that same line of the curb, and here there is a light which illuminates the facade of that pharmacy. Now, the shadows on the sidewalk all point to the store. This points to the store, that points to the store, okay? So we are, with that is like a focal point for us. Okay. Now, the night window. 3 corner windows give us a voyeuristic view into a bedroom where a woman is undressing. A back view as in the New York restaurant, all right? We always saw the back view, and we're seeing her back view there. Now, one window is open with a fluttering curtain, but there's no indication of glass on any of those windows. We are very privy to a moment from an adjacent building. We are opposite her, okay? And we're looking out, and that's what we see. And we also see the 3 windows here, and again, we see the horizontals, okay? Now, a work such as this points to the crowding and claustrophobic feeling that New York can give rise to. The partial glimpse into the room forces our imagination to complete the picture. Now, he loved also to go to the movies, and he would go to the movies every day if he could. He wrote about that. And here is the Sheridan Theater from 1927. And of course, theaters look different today now. We don't see the old-fashioned ones with the beautiful, when you walked in, you had a beautiful show sometime of it would be done in an Egyptian style or some exotic style, and then you'd go to get your refreshment, and then the usher would lead you to your seat. It doesn't work that way anymore. Okay, you got to climb. You got to have those big bleacher seats. Okay, movies figured prominently in Hal Hopper's life. He said, "I go on a regular movie binge, sometimes for a week or more." Many of his images recall movie scenes. The Sheridan was near his home in New York. The balcony looms above with the row of lights that he uses frequently, okay? There's the row of lights. Look, they look like saucers, doesn't it? The saucers from outer space is coming in. Now, but they also had a nice balcony. I remember the old balcony in the Majestic Theater in Perth Amboy. It was just beautiful. And they had a beautiful staircase with brass rails and the staircase was white. It was narrower, and then it got wider as you went down. It was absolutely gorgeous. And I believe now it's used as a black church. It's a black church there, yeah. Okay, now, there was a strong contrast here, again, dark patches with patches of light. We can get a glimpse of the screen, and the series of curves with elaborate railings reflect the movie houses of the past, which look more like palaces. Themes like, for example, with Egyptian art or Art Deco motif. Here's another one. Now here, the usherette is here in a military uniform, and Joe, his wife, posed for that. Now, the way I understand it, at that time, the ushers could not watch the movie. In other words, she cannot go out there and watch the movie. She has to stay on that side if anyone comes in and wants to go up to the balcony. And notice again the same lights. And we also have a hint of the black and white picture that's going on. And there are some heads right here. And as a matter of fact, he and his wife posed for the heads. Okay, now. Now, Joe, as I said, was the usherette for this picture, and he turned her into a young blonde. The space is divided into thirds. She is lost in reverie and not tuned into the picture. As I said, ushers were not allowed to watch the movie. But it's beautifully illuminated by the wall fixture, and the light comes right down on her. There was a rows of figures leads our eye into the audience. Hopper and his wife also pose for these figures. The usher and audience each have their own fantasy. Again, reflecting Manet's figure in the Folies Bergère. She has what she's thinking about, and these people have this reality here that they see on the screen, okay? All right, now the next one. The next one, of course, is his most famous, The Nighthawks from 1942. Hopper's most famous work, it's still at the Whitney, you can go see it. No, it's not the Whitney, I'm sorry. It was brought from Chicago to New York when they had the last large display of Hopper's work. It's at the museum in Chicago. It's not, and that's the reason why I went in. One of the main reasons I went in, because I definitely wanted to see the Nighthawks. His most famous work was parodied many times with party hats and Marilyn Monroe as the woman in the middle, or the woman there. In an elliptical space, there is a triangular diner counter. It is late, and what brings these people together? There's only three of them. The guy that's waiting on them, and the man and woman, and this other man on the opposite side. And it looks almost as if it is done at the triangular building in New York. Wait a minute here. Triangle. It's yeah, exactly. And I think this is why he did it this way, because he wanted to, the Flatiron Building, he wanted to recreate the Flatiron Building on this side, whereas that still is the old New York on the opposite side, okay? Now, it is late. What brings these people together? Note the row of stools with only one occupant, and the lady, and he is isolated, and the couple also is isolated. He smokes, and she's looking into a mirror. But both of those figures are Hopper with a hat on and his wife, okay? Now, Hopper mapped out his colors with sketches with great thoroughness. He indicated the stopper on the cruet to be an amber shade, and also did a careful sketch of the coffee urns that we see in the background. That was in the display when the painting was brought to New York. I saw the sketches that he did of this, and even that little cruet, okay? So he very, very very, very picky and, done with great skill. Now, there was a broad expanse of window. The light is rather harsh, and the rectangle of darkness in which the three figures are framed add up to an almost heartbreaking loneliness. Anything not to go home to that lonely apartment. Now, the building across the street could be his Sunday morning building, which we saw from the 1880s, but this diner is new and modern and acts as a counterpoint to it. The spatial concept of the diner, again, may come from the Flatiron building, the building's prow, that the owner insisted that the architect Daniel Burnham put in there for retail space. Burnham didn't want to do it, but the man who was having it built said, "No, I want you to put that there." Now, this painting he began doing in December of 1941. He was totally engrossed in it. Even during the blackouts, he continued painting and would not shut off the lights, despite the fact that the studio had a skylight. Jo wrote of her fright of possible invasion, but he seemed to ignore it. He started this in December of 41. By January of 42, it was finished. And she wrote, and in her diary, he was about a month and a half working on it, interested all the time, too busy to get excited over public outages, so we stay out of fights. In other words, she gave in to him, all right? Now, this is the last one. Oh, no, here's the Flatiron. I took a picture of the Flatiron building. The building, don't forget, the Flatiron building goes back to the year 1902, and at that time, it was the tallest building in New York City, which is, now it's not the tallest building, but at one point it was, okay? But it's still there, and it's an iconic, how many of you have actually walked past it? Yeah, I have done it too. Yeah, it's just fabulous. It really is. Okay, now let's look at this. This is the Girlies show from 1941. Hopper did many nudes in empty rooms, but this is his most flamboyant burlesque show. That is Jo, posed. She had a very good figure, but he enhanced her shapeliness as she walks aggressively across the stage with a chiffon scarf floating behind her. There is a glaring spotlight with a dark curtain makes her figure stand out almost in 3 dimensions, okay? But we see the backs of 3 heads and a band drummer at the picture plane. In 1937, now this is 1941, in 1937, the burlesque houses had been legislated out of business. The lawyers contended that they caused many sex crimes and appealed to, quote, sex-crazed perverts. So this composition may have been based on a show he had seen earlier. Now, as I told you, Hopper and Jo had a contentious marriage, many arguments, and aggression on her part. She resented her role as cook and business manager and wrote this in her diary. No time to paint. There were also sexual problems. Hopper created and recreated his wife, who modeled for him in various guises. Secretary, usherette, stripper, so she is the silent partner until one reads the excerpts from her diary and sees the caricature that Hopper did of Jo and himself, and then one sees the shifting dynamics in the marriage. So in other words, Jo's diaries have been saved and give us a view into the marriage of Hopper and his wife. I want to thank you very much. If you have any questions, I will answer your questions.